We now present For the Record.
Yet another wildfire in Wisconsin this week and another air quality alert this weekend.
Typically in July, we see very few fires, but this year we're seeing a very large increase in the amount of fire responses.
Plus, a local congressman on how he hopes to change voting laws ahead of next year's presidential race.
Elections are inherently partisan, but the administration of elections should be nonpartisan.
Welcome to For the Record. I'm Neil Nichols. It's no secret at this point. This summer in Wisconsin is unusually dry. Dane County making the list for an extreme drought now 2 weeks in a row. And in central Wisconsin this week, a massive wildfire consumed about 800 acres. All this comes this same summer, where earlier this year, we saw the largest wildfire in the state in more than a decade. That was at Fort McCoy. I'm joined to talk about all this, Ron Schneider, fire specialist with the DNR. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me here.
And what I have to start with, we're recording this Friday morning. Just about 15-20 minutes ago, the DNR just came out with a big advisory warning us again about air quality for Canadian wildfires all through this weekend. Touch quickly on that before we get to the fires here.
Sure. Well, you know, we've dealt with this before, right, with the Canadian smoke, and it all depends on the airflow, and basically in all of North America. And right now we're seeing the airflow once again flow from the north to the south. So all of that Canadian smoke from those fires is now pushing down back into the Midwest again. Which
kind of gets me to the larger question of we're seeing so much this summer in Wisconsin. We're seeing all this bad air from the Canadian wildfires. We're seeing a lot of fires ourselves. We're seeing drought. It's dry. Is this the new normal?
I don't think it's the new normal. I think about every 10 to 15 years, we run into a drought situation in the Midwest. And this year, especially in Canada, they had a historically early wildfire season. Usually their fires don't start until July this time of year. This year they started in May and June. And just the way the weather patterns are with the air, we're seeing a lot more of the Canadian smoke than we normally do.
And we're also I want to talk about, again, that we saw this big wildfire up in Coloma, so central Wisconsin, about 75 miles north of where we're talking right now this week. Any updates on that quickly before we kind of talk about the trend here? Yeah,
thankfully they finally got some rain in Coloma at the Pallet Fire. And it was a good rain. It wasn't just a sprinkle. They finally got, you know, a good ½ inch or more, and that really helped out the wildfire efforts. The DNR worked with all the fire departments on that fire, and after that rain event, we were able to basically turn that fire back over to the local fire departments to put that fire into containment and patrol status.
But that took a couple days, right? Because at least based on what I saw it was at 99% containment, roughly. I think it was Tuesday this week, and then I think by Thursday it took until then until it was 100% containment. So what happens once it's mostly contained, but you guys are still fighting it? Why does it take that long?
Yeah, but so the fire was 99% contained, and until we really are sure that the fire is not going to jump our lines and create a new fire outside of the original control lines, we really couldn't call that fire 100% contained. So after the initial flames went down as the fire was spreading, we basically had a perimeter around that fire with fire engines, with firefighters, with bulldozers, making sure that that fire stayed contained and didn't jump the lines. And then that also gave us an opportunity to what we call mop up or extinguish a lot of the internal parts of the fire that were still burning and smoking.
Which kind of is a little bit related to my next question. You know, until you have 100% containment, but how long until, say, the very last coal is out?
I mean, it may take weeks.
Okay.
And we see that a lot with the insides of these fires. We just can't reach a lot of them with fire engines. Whether it's the fire departments or the DNR, it's really hard on these large fires to get in the middle of the woods to extinguish this stuff. Even to the point when I left the fire on Wednesday, we had fire department members that were putting 5 gallons of water on their back in back cans and walking in between trees to get to parts of the fire that were burning in the middle of the forest and extinguishing those areas because we couldn't reach them with fire engines or with bulldozers.
Fascinating. Now, I've lived and reported in Wisconsin now for roughly about, I think this is my 5th summer, right? So is it immediacy bias when I look back at the 5 years compared to this summer and think, wow, we're getting a lot more than normal? We had this massive fire at Fort McCoy a couple months ago. We have this big one now. Is it me just because it's happening this summer, it feels like it's bigger than normal?
No, it's definitely a busier year for us. It's the most drought we've seen in the Midwest in quite a few years, if not decades. Like I said, you know, we see this drought condition come about every 10 to 15 years. And then if you look historically in Wisconsin's past on what years did we have a problem with fires, not just in the Midwest, but nationwide. You know, we look back to maybe the year of 2000. If you remember 1988, that's when the Yellowstone fires burned. 1976, 77, those were really dry years for the nation in the Midwest. So we see this pattern about every 10 to 15 years where just the weather pattern set up where we have a really bad, challenging fire season and drought conditions.
That makes sense. I won't divulge on air how old I am, but I don't remember 1988. I'll just put that out there. I think the question for me is, what are some of the most common mistakes you're seeing from just people across Wisconsin when it comes to starting these fires? What are the mistakes that are leading to these fires?
Our number one cause of forest fires in Wisconsin is people burning debris. So we try to advise people, hey, if you have a brush pile, burn it in winter when there's snow on the ground. Generally, our forest fire season in Wisconsin is usually March, April, and May. And usually by the end of May, the grass turns green. We don't have many problems with forest fires being ignited. This year, due to the drought conditions, we have a lot of people that maybe in the past said, well, I'm going to wait until June, or I'm going to wait until July to burn that pile of leaves or to burn that pile of brush because typically it's very green. We're not seeing that this year. Due to the drought, our fuels are just as dry, if not drier now, as they were right after snow melt in April and May. So we're seeing, more fires being ignited.
This might be a better question for our meteorologist team, but hey, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I don't expect you to predict the future, right? And I know we got a lot of good rain this week, but do you think we're closing in at the end here, or is fires going to still be a concern through August, say?
I am crossing my fingers that the weather patterns have changed. I know we just had a good shot of rain here that went through Dane County last night. It looks like there's chances for rain now, at least in the forecast, where within the last month we didn't see that.
That is true, according to our Mets this morning.
Yeah, so I hope so. The problem now is, it'll take a lot of rain to make up the deficit that we have. That's our challenge right now is, we need rain, normal rain, but now not only do we need normal rain events, but we need to make up for the inches of rain that we didn't get earlier this spring.
Anything I haven't asked you that you want me to ask? Anything we're missing?
I mean, I could go on for a while, but other fire causes. Like I mentioned, debris burning is our number one cause of fires, but we're also seeing a lot of other fires this year from some of our historical causes where we had a lot of fires like equipment. So a lot of people in summer are pulling trailers, whether they're pulling a boat or a trailer or doing construction work. We see a lot of fires that are caused from trailers of what we call equipment fires. So it could be a tractor hitting a rock, mowing a field. It could be someone pulling a trailer with a chain that fell off of their vehicle and throws a spark into the grass. So typically in summer we don't see a lot of these fire starts, and now we're seeing a lot of them. And we're also seeing a lot of our fire starts from power lines too. For example, if a tree falls on a power line, and that power line falls to the ground, the grass is brown, and that's causing a fire. So it's not just debris burning, although that's the number one way to prevent fires is to just make sure that people really, if you don't need to burn debris this time of year, maybe this is one of those years you do wait until snowfall and burn it, because we're seeing fires being caused from a lot of other causes also, not just humans.
Which I should ask you, I've been talking mainly about like the biggest ones, right? The ones that are making our news, the ones that are filling the headlines. But as you mentioned, there's a lot of it's just fires everywhere. They're just smaller fires and may not be making news. I mean, tell me again how many fires you've been at just this week. Yes, I mean, the DNR, in the DNR response area, we've had over 50 fires in the last week. And there are even more fires than that are in what we call the cooperative area, where the fire departments respond to fires, and there may be fires out there that were extinguished that we don't even know about. Typically in July we see very few fires, but this year we're seeing a very large increase in the amount of fire responses. All right. Ron, this has been very informative. Thank you so much for joining me. And I think you joined me in telling all of our viewers, stop playing with matches, stop playing with debris, go back to the basics. Everything you teach your kids about playing with fire just applies for everyone this year. Exactly. Yep. It is back to the basics. And even if you do burn, make sure you're on site. Make sure you have a garden hose. Make sure you fully extinguish the ashes before you leave the site. Yep. Absolutely. Ron, thank you so much. We'll be right back.